Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rowing Chat. I'm Rebecca Caro, and today I'm joined by Mike Davenport. But first, a message from our sponsors. Finding good quality clothing when you're athletic can be a challenge, particularly for men. Dress shirts are just not designed for rowers whose arms and backs are more muscled than the average desk jockey. So we're now introducing William Marnie, the shirt maker for athletes. Their range of dress shirts is designed from the start for tall and fit men. Each shirt has a detailing in style, fit and fabrics that'll change the way you experience clothes, says the founder, Matt Marnie. You may have seen them if you were at the Head of the Charles last fall. They knew they'd come to the right place, they told me, when they saw the range of athletic bodies walking the towpath in front of their booth. And so for the man or men in your life, introduce them to William Marnie shirts. You could buy them one or you could buy them a couple. As one customer said, it really is a perfect dress shirt for someone that's tall and fit. You can get started, thanks to Rowing Chat, with an exclusive 10% discount. The coupon to use is Rowing Chat 10, where 10 is a numeral. You can follow the link from the show notes or go to rowing.chat/sponsors. Now, we're also doing a Rowing Chat audience survey at the moment, so you're going to hear us mention this for a little while. Our survey is really important to us, and we'd really like you to participate. It'll help us learn more about you, no matter whether this is the first episode you've listened to or you've been with us listening to the show since 2013 when we started. Please take a few minutes, go to our website, rowing.chat/listener-survey. You'll also find the survey link at the bottom of our home page. And yes, you can complete it anonymously. It'll take you a few minutes, so grab a glass of whatever you like to drink and get going. We really appreciate you participating. Now, today, I'm joined by Mike Davenport, who has been a semi-frequent visitor to Rowing Chat. Mike, welcome again.
Hi, it's good to see you.
Now, Mike wrote a fantastic blog post just a day ago called Give Your Rowing Equipment Some Love, and that piqued my interest. Mike, why did you write this at this time?
At this time is the catch phrase of the day right there. It's a crazy time, and unfortunately, a lot of people are in different stages of distress and scrambling around trying to figure things out. Well, one of the things I think that got left behind, I know got left behind because I've talked to a bunch of coaches over the last week or so, is their rowing equipment. I had one coach tell me his boathouse looked like Pompeii when Mount Vesuvius blew. Just absolute mess. People just, everything was left as it was. He said it was almost a panic when we found out. I think it was a Friday afternoon. They found out that they were going to be, their program, not only the program was going to be shut down, but this was a college. So their institution was going to be shut down. And so they all just left. And no one has gone back to tend to the equipment. And so that got me thinking about all that poor rowing equipment that's just, it in itself is at the boathouse in many cases. And it needs some attention and love. So that's what I was doing with this. That was my intent with the post, is to help people, especially if they have a little bit of free time and they have the ability to get to the boathouse, realizing here's a couple of things I can do that will make life better when this is all over. And it will be over.
So on the screen and in the show notes is the link to Mike's blog post, which is on the MaxRigging.com website. Right, Mike, give us the benefit of your wisdom. Kick us off. What should people be starting with?
Okay, well, let's say you have a chance to go back to your boathouse. And the very first thing I would do is, of course, after you take steps to make sure that you're safe and sound and don't go crazy by trying to lift things by yourself that may hurt you. Try to put an 8 on the rack all by yourself, those type of things. There's an order that I would approach things with. And the first thing I do is give your oar some love. And that's pretty simple. And the person I talked to, actually, there were oars that were left on the floor of the boathouse. And, over a period of time, who knows what's going to happen? What could possibly happen? Somebody could come in, it was dark, they could trip over them, X, Y, and Z. So what I would do is, first thing is, before racking your oars and getting them out of any way, if they were left in the way, is I would clean them, and I would clean the oar handles very well. And the recommendation there, each manufacturer that I've talked to, specifically Concept 2 and Croker, they have recommendations up on their site, but basically it comes down to cleaning and disinfecting, 2 different steps. Now, if you can do both steps, I'll tell you about them in a second here. If you can do both steps, that's great. But if you only have time or the energy to do one, the best would be to disinfect. So the way to disinfect most things that we're going to be talking about is using bleach, a fresh bleach solution, usually about a 1-to-9 ratio. So 1 part bleach to 9 part water. And all you have to do is just basically wet the surface and then let it air dry. It's really that simple. You can easily, if you can, make yourself a bucket of water with that ratio of bleach and soap, and just dip the handles in and then put them away. Now, it doesn't matter whether they're a rubber handle or a felt handle, it will still work. So that's disinfected. You don't need to dry them; they can air dry, and that'll work. But in terms of cleaning, that's a little bit different. So the disinfecting would be just taking care of any possible contagions that are on there. And I'm not just talking about the current coronavirus. It could be other issues that could be on the handle. So that's just, the disinfecting is just a real quick thing. But the cleaning is for future use, and that is also can affect the performance of the athlete. So, for example, let's use Concept 2 green handles. They tend to be almost a rubber synthetic surface, and on those surfaces, you'll get a lot of grease from your hands. When they get on there, if somebody's used sunscreen, use their hands for sunscreen, put it on their face, whatever, and they get on that oar handle. There could be a lot of stuff on the oar handle. So all you have to do there is, and what I do all the time, is just I use a simple glass cleaner, like a Windex or over-the-counter glass cleaner, spray it on. Then use a little green scrubby that we tend to use here in our kitchens for cleaning the pots and pans. They're soft, so it wouldn't be steel or anything like that. It's a soft scrubby, and just use that gently to to get the grease and grime that are off on the handle. Then you can you rinse it, want to disinfect it, put it away. Then when you come back to the boathouse, they're good to go. It'll also give you a chance to see if there's any issues there that need repair, whether you have a rip handle. And this may be a really good time for you to take care of those. It may not be, but if you have time, this may be a good time to take those repairs. So that's the handle of, the 2 separations of cleaning and disinfecting. If you can only do one, the disinfecting, but if you can do both, the cleaning and then the disinfecting, after you clean it, disinfect it, and put them in the rack. That's what I would recommend. The second piece of equipment would be the electronics. Not everyone who rows uses electronics, but most do, especially the larger programs. It may be something as simple as a PA system, a voice amplifying system. It could be something more involved, GPS. There are a lot of great products out there. Could be something as simple as a stroke watch or even a megaphone, electric, especially megaphone. Those should be both cleaned and disinfected. I'm going to recommend that you check with the manufacturer before you specifically disinfect them. I've seen people do it different ways, basically into 2 categories: the right way and the wrong way. The wrong way, you cause more damage than you could possibly imagine. As a matter of fact, you can destroy it if you're not careful. Yes, they are water resistant, and they may even, maybe some products out there that call themselves waterproof. However, I would be very cautious about what you spray on any sort of electronics to clean it, or whatever materials you use there. But I would definitely I would definitely disinfect electronics, um, and then, you know, put them away in a safe place, a dry place, and unplug them. Electronics, all the manufacturers I've talked to uh, don't recommend your recharging the batteries over a long period of time. So if they're in storage, unplug them, tuck them away in a nice safe place. If it needs to be under lock and key, that's your call, that's your choice, but just in a safe place. So it will be there, or your electronics will be there when you return. And if they do have removable batteries, I would take the batteries out, the A or the D cell batteries as such. But if it's a rechargeable battery that stays in, then whatever the manufacturer recommends. But electronics, I would definitely give some attention to. I know that there's some programs that leave them plugged in all during breaks, and that can cause damage.
So with regards to the removable batteries, that would include things like boat lights, that you should take the
Yes,
batteries out of the lights.
I absolutely would. I absolutely would, and keep and then leave the part of the electronics that the battery goes into open, so it stays dry, because moisture can get in there and it can cause corrosion. So I would leave that all open, and especially leave the batteries in a place where it stays nice and dry. Yeah. The third place, and this is usually where most people start, but I recommended the Oars electronics first, because you can go in there and get overwhelmed by the third part, and then you get bogged down by the boats. They're so big. You may be by yourself, and it's really, sometimes it can be really a challenge. You walk into a boathouse and think, "Oh, I've got to take care of this 8, or I've got 3 singles and one by myself, and this is going to take forever." Well, if you start with something simple and you get it knocked off, we'll call it the warm up. So here's the warm up, and with electronics and the oar, and now you get into the meat of it. Your boat. If it's just your boat, if it's just a single, then you can handle it, I'm sure. But if it's a program where, I had a call from a coach, and she's got 4, 5, 8s, and 3 of them are down in slings, and she's the only one that's allowed to go into the boathouse. How is she going to handle it? Well, keeping the boat in slings, and we'll talk about that in a second, is highly unrecommended for any sort of long period. As a matter of fact, I say if a boat is going to be in slings for longer than 2 hours, then you are at risk, or the boat's at risk of significant damage. But in terms of cleaning, this is a great place to not only clean your, or great time, not only clean your boat, but to check around to see if there's any sort of damage that needs to be taken care of, or any sort of enhancement that you can do. An enhancement might be putting in a new PA system that you've just been getting by with an older one and such. Or maybe replacing tracks that need to be replaced. But the big thing is to get it cleaned. This current virus, the latest recommendations I've seen from health professionals, is that this virus will only live on hard, non-porous surfaces for, let's say, the week at the most. I think that's the longest I've seen. Several days is the typical estimation I've seen that virus will live on it. Most of us won't start rowing, if we've stopped rowing, won't start rowing within that period of time. So in this case, the virus will probably be dead and gone, or not active by the time we get back into it. However, there are other contagions that can live, especially bacterial, that can live on a boat for a long period of time. Like a really grubby place, that's kind of disgusting place, is the front stops of the tracks. And that's because you get sweat in there, you can get skin in there. It's a great place for bacteria. Matter of fact, a friend of mine did a bacterial test on those front stops of the tracks, and he got a readout from a lab about the intensity of the bacteria, or the concentration. is a better choice of words, of bacteria on those front stops compared to other surfaces like a cell phone or smartphone, bathroom seat, and different surfaces. And by far and away, the highest concentration of bacteria reported was on those front stops. So that would be this is a great time, if you can, this is a great time to not only get in there and disinfect, but clean those areas. Then, after you get your boat cleaned, maybe you are able to wash the hull and put it away. Now, rowing hull is a tough surface. And if it doesn't get washed for, weeks, then more than likely it'll be fine. Most of us, luckily, don't row in water that has contaminants that will attack the surface. And if it's out of the sun, if it's out of UVs, it's probably okay. If you can wash it, put a coat of wax on it, or if you don't, you're not into the waxing mode, just keep it clean. That's great. But the biggest thing with a boat is to make sure it's properly stored. Get it out of slings, get it on safe racks. And what I mean by safe racks are sturdy, dependable racks that you can count on, that shy of a significant event, earthquake, something really physical in nature, it's going to be safe and sound. Now that would be the biggest and best thing. If you can't clean it but can at least rack it, that's better than leaving in slings or leaving it on the ground on rollers, unless that's where you typically keep it.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the potential for damage if you leave your boat on slings. So starting with a big boat like an 8, what can happen to it? I'm guessing you're leaving it the right way up on a sling?
Yeah, so let's say it seats up. I mean, it can go either way in most of the newer slings, but it doesn't really matter, seats up or seats down. You've got, let's say you've got 200 to 250 pounds of weight on those two areas, those two slings. And if one is not as structurally sound as it should be, gives way, or somebody tries to move it and improperly and it can tip over, then you've got significant damage that could be done. I've seen that. I've seen somebody come back to their boathouse and the sling gave way overnight. And now they've got an issue where they've got a hole that needs to be repaired on an 8. Slings are not meant for long-term storage, and I have never seen any manufacturer recommend that. They're great when it's for simple use, quick use. You're rigging, you need to give it some attention. You're teaching, and you just need the boat seats up, or you said the right side up. That's great, but do not store. And I'll use little air quotes here. Do not, to emphasize, do not store a boat in slings. I don't even care if it's a single and you're putting 3 slings underneath it. And you think you've got your bases covered. All it takes, a little bit of wind when it's outside, or just, somebody not looking where they're going and things get knocked over. So I would not put it on slings, unsupervised especially. Okay. All right, then the next one, in your boat, if you happen to have quick release shoes, the ones that can pop out and in, then I would take those out, and you can clean them according to the manufacturer, Shimano, who I've worked with, and there's some really good manufacturers out there. I just personally have a love for theirs. I've rode their equipment for years. You can take them out, put them in a bucket of soapy water, and then let them dry, especially if you have some time. Simple cleaning. They have recommendations up on their site in terms of how to clean them, but that would be a great time to give them a little bit of attention. And for also when you're looking at the boat, if you have shoes that need to be replaced or repaired, this would be a great time to do it. The next one, number 5, would be for I call it apparel, kit, clothing. This is probably a really good time to make sure that, especially if you have a program, that your uniforms are taken care of. One coach that we had a conversation with, she said, "Yep, all the uniforms are in we popped them all in a trash bag." They were actually getting ready to go for a training period, and all the athletes had their uniforms, and they'd actually had them on to for a pitcher, team pitcher. I'm not quite sure if they practiced them or not, but they hurriedly gathered them all, put them in a trash, collected them in a trash bag, not to throw them away, but just that was how they were going to process them. And she said they'd been in there 2 weeks and hadn't been able to give them any attention. And I said, that's a place that you probably want to give some attention to, even if you just do nothing more than hang them up and let them air dry. I said, make sure you hold your breath when you do it, because it could be a rough experience to start. So yeah. Then the next one, and this is probably, there's two pieces of equipment that get the most abuse from rowers, and not intentional abuse. One is the boat trailer, but the second one is the launch, and this is a really good time to make sure that your launch is well attended, and the gas put away. It's, if you lock them up, the motor's up out of the water. I've seen some of the boathouses I've just kind of rambled around with. They leave their motors down in the water, and I think that adds to quick aging of the equipment. So this would be a good time to, if you can, clean the launch, get everything out of the cups of coffee and all that stuff out. Coaches tend to, I think that's a trademark. They like to sometimes leave their cups of coffee in the bottom of the launch. I think it's a marking system or something. But whatever love and attention you can give your launch, this would be a great time. And maybe nothing more than just putting under lock and key and raising the motor. Or if you're cycling through and you're waiting for maintenance, if this is a time to have somebody maintain the motor, maintain the launch, bottom coat, whatever it is wherever you are in your maintenance plan, this may be a good time to do that. I keep saying a good time, and that's pretty much dictated by having the time that some of us now seem to have, but also having the ability to get to the boathouse and pay attention to the equipment. And then safety gear. A lot of us have more safety gear than ever, which I think is a great thing. But that gear needs attention, and especially if it's something that you're taking out on the water. For example, here in the States, we have what are called kippy kits. They're bags of, almost a duffel bag full of life jackets and other gear. They tend to get taken out in the launches, which is great, and brought back in, but they don't get a lot of love in between. And this is probably a really good time to open them up, make sure everything's dry, let the PFDs dry out, make sure they're then stored in a place where the critters aren't going to make homes in them, little mice and such. This would be a perfect place for a family of mice to have a little vacation. So I would, give them some love. And you had mentioned bow lights. I consider those safety equipment. That's a great time to open them up, make sure they're dry, make sure they're safe, and also workable. And then tools. So we all have rowing tools. There's a wide array of them. They'll cover all sorts of spectrums, from the very fancy to the one that you picked up for a nickel at the flea market or the bazaar. But give them some love, because you're going to count on them at some time. You're going to need them. You'll need that wrench. You'll need that pitch meter at some time. If you're using an electric pitch meter, great time, take the battery out, let it dry, make sure it's safe and sound. If your tools are nothing more than they sit in the toolbox and you take them back and forth from the launch and have them in the boathouse to repair the boat, then open up the toolbox, make sure it's dry, let them dry if you can. I would keep them open. I think a toolbox is a great place. I know a toolbox is a great place for moisture and mildew to kind of grow sometimes. So I would make sure that they're in a good, safe place, but also treat it. They usually don't need a lot of attention, but some of the moving parts, pliers and such, may need a little bit of oil, especially if they happen to get wet, you're out in the launch and such. And then the area that we tend to go in and out of, store our equipment, we call them boathouses and other different names, but this may be the perfect time to make sure that your boathouse is safe and secure. I know here in the States right now, people aren't at their boathouses, at least the right people. You want to make sure they're safe and sound, under lock and key if you need to be, so that the wrong people don't have easy access. Make sure your power is off if it needs to be, whether you have water and you need that to be off when it's not occupied. Just take care of those little things. I know one coach was telling me that they had left, they have an office down there, and they had left a wall unit air conditioning on for 3 weeks. And she goes, I feel a little bit silly because it's 37 degrees right now and the air conditioning's on down there, but I can't go to the boathouse. So it's just, if you can give the boathouse some love. I would also take one step on all your equipment, but especially the boathouse, is if it is insured, this is probably an appropriate time to make sure that your insurance is up to date. If you have rowing vehicles that you use, the trailer I'd mentioned real quick, or say if you have a tow vehicle or such, just give a quick check to make sure registration, insurance is up to date. And if you have a couple minutes that you would have spent at a practice, that you can get down there, just slide those things onto your list and see if you can check that off. And then the last one I had written about, it's certainly not the last thing that you could do, but we had so many events that were canceled, and I know this wasn't just in the States; it was all across the world. And the latest one, that of course was the Olympics. This is a time with so many cancellations that budgets might get ignored. And this is a good time to focus on making sure, for something as simple as appropriate refunds. If you're planning a trip and you put a deposit down on hotels, is that money refundable? And what are the steps you can take or you need to take to get refunds? It's just to check the budget and any expenses and see about getting either recouped or making sure that there's no expenses that will be coming in that you won't be, or you shouldn't be charged for. So that's kind of an overview of the, of the love that you can give. And the bottom line is that a lot of us had to quickly change not only our priorities, but our day-to-day actions and our weekly actions and our monthly actions and steps we take. And this is a good time to just take a breath and look back and say, is my equipment okay? Is the boathouse okay? We've been focusing on the human part of this for so long, which is great. Make sure you and your athletes are good, safe, and sound. That's the number one priority. But if you find yourself with a few minutes or longer where you can get away and check on the equipment and, as I say, give it some love, that's the bottom line. It's something to maybe put on your to-do list.
Mike, that's all great checklist and really good advice. Now, for countries that are perhaps like where you live in some form of domestic lockdown, one way, if you are allowed to go out and about singly or in groups from your household, one way might be to put a checklist inside the boathouse and have a roster. So people go up there for maybe 30 minutes at a time, and you can just write the next thing that needs doing and check it off when you've done it, so that the next person shows up and knows what the next thing to do is. And it'll give everybody a good sense of contributing, a little bit of focus and something to do apart from lying on the sofa or working out in your home gym, or doing the garden, if you'll me.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like that idea. Put it right next to the rowing log. Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mike. Great insights as ever. I really appreciate the work that you do on the MaxRigging website. I have frequently had cause to share it with people because it's so full of really helpful resources. And so thanks for coming forward with that great checklist. To our listeners, if you have an idea of something that you'd like Rowing Chat to cover off in the next week or so, get in touch. We'd love to have more voices on the channel. You don't have to commit to do this forever. It's always a pleasure to hear new points of view from different parts of the world, all contributing to our mutual love of the great sport of rowing. Now, this is part of the Rowing Chat network. There are now 7 separate podcasts on the network. Some of them are hosted by single people. Some of them are hosted by teams. If you'd like to join any of them, please do get in touch. Now, you can get email notifications of new shows as they publish. If you go to our website, rowing.chat, there's a mailing list sign-up option there, and you get once a week an email which has a hyperlink to each of the new episodes that's been published. But you, of course, can also listen to our shows or you can watch them. So subscribe on YouTube if you want to watch. If you want to listen, go to any of the popular podcast apps from SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, and so on. We also appreciate people coming forward with comments and remarks, sometimes live, sometimes after the fact. It's always good to keep the conversation going. I'm Rebecca Caro, and this was Rowing Chat with Mike Davenport. Till next time, bye-bye.